It's time for some real talk. There's just too much music being released these days in order for your music to be special just because it's out there and available to listen to. But in this episode of the podcast, we're going to talk about what is most important, and that is building anticipation for your release and how to have a successful launch. So let's get to it.
You're listening
to the CD Baby
CD Baby
DIY
Musician
Podcast. Hey there, and welcome to episode number 330 of the CD Baby DIY Musician Podcast. My name is Kevin Bruner, and joining me is Chris Robley. And on today's episode, we'll be discussing how to build anticipation for your music. And I think it's going to be a little bit of a different take on releasing music and how things have changed and some things you need to be paying attention to and trying and doing as an artist in order to get people to care, because there's just too much music out there for them to care about everything. So with that said, Chris, how are you doing?
Great. I'm caught up on sleep from Folk Alliance. If anyone listened to our previous episode, they heard us at Folk Alliance. We probably sounded giddy and tired, I think, but
yeah. Hopefully we made sense. Yeah. Folk Alliance is amazing. We just got back from it this past weekend. By the time you hear this episode, it'll probably be a couple weeks in the rearview mirror, but what an amazing experience. It's outside of our conference. Chris, this is my favorite. And it's my favorite for a number of reasons. One, it's very much about music, but not just that, the artist experience and artists interacting with each other, and so many performances and showcases. But beyond that, Chris, what was amazing and made it a landmark weekend is that for the first time in 17 years of knowing each other, we played on a record together. Two records.
That's true. Yeah. So you were you set up your own studio session that I got to participate in. I don't know if you want to tell anyone highlights.
Yeah, we could talk about that. Yeah.
Then I've been working on for the past, 10 years. Every time Folk Alliance was in Kansas City, I'd booked a night in the studio to record 70s covers. And now at the end of all that, I have 12 songs after 10 years. One night a year. It's no way to make a record, but it's also, it's a special way to make a record.
Hey, and my blazing guitar solo over the end of How Long, I think that's gonna sell all the units you need, Chris.
Yeah, it's as if Slash played with the band Ace from the 70s.
Yeah. And then I put together a group of musicians, which you were a part of, to start tracking for Melody Ryan. And wow, that was quite possibly, well, definitely some of my favorite time in the studio I've ever had. I felt like we just had some real musical magic there. And the group of musicians we had was just, not only were they amazing players, but they were just so much fun to play with.
Yeah.
And it was such a big reminder to me about how much that matters in your musical experience. And, oftentimes I'll say that talent is just one piece of it. Sometimes being a good hang is more important. When you have both of those things, some real magic can happen in the studio.
And to shout out where we're at a studio in, what's the name of that town?
Shawnee, Kansas.
Right outside of Kansas City. It's called Massive Sound. A guy named Paul Malinowski was the engineer. He had production ideas here and there too, but he's a great engineer. Super encouraging. Everything sounds good pretty quick.
Yeah, and if you're passing through the Kansas City area and just want to grab some studio time, Paul was great. Yeah, that was the other thing. It wasn't just the musicians that were such a warm, friendly environment. It just made all the difference, because I was pretty stressed because I put this band together and it's like, are we going to walk away with just some bare bones tracks? But man, we really got a lot done, and just such a comfortable environment and affordable. So yeah, check it out.
Well, just one thing, this is probably so obvious to say, but I feel like so many musicians now, we're making music online. It's this weird long distance collaboration, building things a track at a time. It takes forever. So collaboration, yeah, I don't know. It's not inspiring to me. And it's inspired. It's inspiring when you hear something back and you're like, that's cool. But it's not inspiring in that you feel like you're all making something together. And so being in the studio where you could literally just like talk to the person next to you and say, hey, do that thing again at the end of the chorus or whatever the idea is, you immediately execute it and then can be like, yeah, now that we've heard it, it's a great idea or it's a terrible idea, but we don't have to fret about it and put it in Dropbox and wait 3 weeks for a decision. It's like, go. I loved that.
Well, and that one of the moments that it was one of Melody's songs where I was like, this might be one of my favorite moments ever in the studio. Usually when I track with Small Town Poets or Hello Morning or whatever band I've been in, it's been like we're just going for drums and bass, and we didn't take much time setting up guitar sounds and just for efficiency's sake. And so I'm kind of playing along, or maybe I'm not quite sure of the parts. This was different that time, this time, but I remember a particular moment, Chris, where you hit like this low end power chord on the piano. And then I just hit this big chord. It was just like, bam, goosebumps. and
it was probably one of those happy accidents. I don't think we talked about it, but
no, we didn't. We didn't.
If we have to do another take, we're doing that again.
Yes. And then I was improvising this lead thing at the end that just worked on all levels. And normally it's like, oh, well, there's a bad note in there, or no, I'll go change that. And I've listened back to it a bunch. I'm like, man, we just captured some magic. Anyway, it was such a great time, such a great reminder of why I love making records, and just a reminder that like playing with people is so much fun and critical to building that, like those moments in your music. Because I remember when we got done with one of those takes, we all look at each other going like, that was awesome, and when you see like the drummer, like feeling it, and the bass player, everyone's getting inspired, that translates into the recording, and it's great. And super proud of Melody and how far she's come and with her songs and sound. And yeah, you should check out, make sure to follow her on social media and follow along. Cause Chris, you and I will probably be playing on some more tracks for her coming up, and hopefully a release later this summer. So fun times. I'm so happy to be a part of that, and super excited for her album and for you to finally finish this cover album.
I know, 12 songs over, I don't know, 8 years. I forget how many years it's been in Kansas City. I just had one last comment about being in the studio with people. It's particularly inspiring and fun when everyone has the confidence and space to contribute ideas, but not that level of ego investment where they can't be redirected. Like ultimately it's like, this was Melody's project, so it's like there's a veto power there, obviously, but there's all kind of this collaborative arrangement. I never felt like there was one moment where anyone got like, whatever, that no one got testy and defensive. No. It's like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. It might be weird. Tell me when to shut up. And I love when everyone has that attitude.
Yeah. You know what? Now that you say that, there wasn't a single moment where I felt any sort of social awkwardness. And you've known the bass player forever. We all met the drummer that day.
Yeah.
And there, so there could have been some of that dynamic and happening there, but no, it's just so collaborative and positive that, man, you're just like, dang it, I want to make records the rest of my life.
If people are sick of hearing us talk about recording for 10 minutes, just know, return to the caveat. Kevin and I have had this podcast for like 17 years and we have never recorded together. So we're just making up for almost 2 decades of missing studio time.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, it was so much fun. And yeah, I mean, also the reason I mentioned it so much is like, artists have so many bad experiences in the studio, especially when they're starting out. I mean, that happened to Melody. I think we've even mentioned it on a previous episode. And it's such a bummer when you spend so much money and time and effort and feel like your artistic vision was completely missed or unfinished. And this was the exact opposite of that experience. So that's why it felt so great, because we've all been in situations where we thought we'd get more out of a session, didn't accomplish as much as we'd hoped, or maybe it's not sounding as good as we'd like. but I felt like we nailed it on a lot of fronts that week. And yeah, so there you have it. Yeah. Chris and I have finally been in the studio together and made music together. We can now turn the page and start the next chapter of our journey together, Chris.
I thought you were going to say start the next album.
That too. That's the next part of our journey. Anyway, on today's episode, we are going to be talking about building anticipation for your music. And it's something that Chris and I have been talking a lot about behind the scenes. We've been sort of thinking about this episode for a long time. I think it's going to be a great episode. And right off the top, I want to invite you to call our listener line or email as things come to mind during this episode, because there's a lot of things many of you are doing that are working or not working. And we're going to really dive into what even building anticipation for your music is in the first place. But reminder that you can call our listener line at 360-524-2209 or email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. And a huge reminder that this is not where you go for CD Baby support. Your phone call will be deleted. So it's about contributing to the podcast. There's support.cdbaby.com for support. I've been getting a lot of support calls lately. And I'm like, sorry, can't help you. And if you want to follow along with Chris and my musical journeys, we'd love to connect with you on social. You can follow at CD Baby if you want to check out CD Baby's socials, at Chris Robley to see what Chris has been up to and all the music stuff he's doing. And I'm at K Bruner on Instagram and TikTok and all that. And so, yeah, those are the places. And for today's table of contents, we're going to start by defining what anticipation is and why it matters, because it sounds like a simple word, but it really is a slight shift from, I think, what most artists and marketing in general tends to lean into. And then we're going to talk about 10 ways to build anticipation. And then we've got a call coming up later on the show. So let's dive in. Chris, is there any opening statements around building anticipation that you want to highlight?
Yeah, well, so I think why anticipation is necessary, because if you can get people to care about your music before it's even out, well, you've done some pretty good heavy lifting for making a good foundation for the launch of your music. And we're inevitably always going to hear from the artist who's like, well, people should just listen on its own merits and love it. And I'm like, we are so many decades past that. If that was ever a thing, it is not anymore. And I had a panel discussion that I moderated the other day. And there was an artist on there named Robin Ottalini, I think you pronounce her last name. She's a country singer who did really well on TikTok. Now she's got a deal with Warner. And she was saying, it's not their job to care. It's not the random person out there in the world's job to care. It's your job as the artist to make them care. And so she was saying that in reference to sort of why she spends so much energy on TikTok, making stuff before her music is out, or, and then sometimes alongside when the music is out to get people to care. So we thought in this, we'd talk about the before aspect of that sort of promotion.
Yeah, because both of you and I have been talking about, like, there's so much music out there, and this may sound weird knowing where we work, but it's like, if no one's going to care anyway, why release it? That's sort of the question that I think a lot of artists are asking themselves now. And I think what, that mindset of like, people should just care because it's out there. Usually when I hear that, it's an older artist who maybe grew up in an era where the only music that you could check out was what was in the record bins at whatever store you had access to. And so music was kind of scarce. And so therefore something new arriving meant, ooh, I could go dive into this. Maybe this is some new tasty morsel I want to try. But that's not the case anymore. Obviously, music is not scarce. It's literally everywhere we go. It's almost impossible to get away from it these days.
And to refer back to our previous controversial episode, AI is just now making hundreds of thousands of new tracks every, month or whatever. And so, yeah, music is not scarce.
Yeah. So that doesn't mean all hope is lost. That doesn't mean you shouldn't release music, but it means you need to take a shift in how you approach releasing music. And as we're talking about anticipation, it's the idea of not just letting your fans know that something's coming, but giving them this sense of like excitement and forward looking towards some future event, and anticipating that thing dropping because they're excited about it.
I think one way you said it when we were outlining the episode, you said anticipation is an experience as opposed to just conveying information, which is more like a news release. Like, so we'll talk about some of the differences in that, but I like that, an experience versus just kind of cold info.
Yeah, you're trying to create this feeling in people that, wow, I can't wait for this thing. And we see that a lot in our daily lives. Oftentimes anticipating your family vacation is far better
Than the vacation itself.
than the vacation itself. You're like, I can't wait till we're on a beach in Hawaii. And then reality sets in of being on a beach in Hawaii with your family. You're like, I just can't wait to get the heck out of here and get home, So we experience that in so many places where we love looking forward to something and having something that we're have a future date in mind, that we kind of just it's just something to, it gets us through the day. Like, we're excited for this thing to happen, and then when it happens, it's always like sometimes it just doesn't live up to the hype, but that's okay. Sometimes it does. So there's different kinds of anticipation. You want to hit that list real quick, Chris?
Yeah, and actually, you just mentioned one that I hadn't really thought of, but anticipation, one kind is just sort of delayed gratification, which is like what you're talking about of the vacation. Oh, that's down the road, and I can't wait for it because I know I'll experience some feeling or some relief or whatever it is. Then obviously, like suspense and mystery is a big one. Like when you plant that seed in someone and they're like, I have to know. So that's a big one. When you get your audience to feel like they are participating, either like literally participating in the creation or the brainstorming around something, or just that they're like following the journey and they feel sort of included, and maybe something about your identity as an artist, they I don't know, they see a reflection of themselves, so they buy in as a kind of identity affinity, I guess. And the last one I was thinking is, if the artist is promising to go through some sort of transformation or triumph, maybe they're the underdog, and so you're just rooting for someone that you like, and you want them to succeed against some odds, or they've gone through some stuff and they're about to burst forth in some new way as a new person or new genre or whatever, and like that feels like something you want to see fully realized, but it hasn't yet.
Yeah. And I think I'm not sure if one point we have this in the notes down below, but I don't want to jump the gun. But I think we see this a lot, a particular kind of this with movies and TV shows and streaming shows, where the trailer, they call it a teaser trailer because, it's like maybe the season that ended, it left on a cliffhanger, or just you want to see the continuation of the story. And then the teaser trailer comes out and it's like, oh, I think this is going to happen or that happened. It sparks all this conversation and it sparks this idea of like, oh, I can't wait to see how this plays out. And it's sort of that. It can be the suspense or mystery, which happens a lot, or, just that needing to close the loop on that storyline and understand what happens. So we see that a lot in a certain way in those fields. And it's like, trying to tap into that as an artist on the music side. There's some similarities, but also some differences and some opportunities there. And ultimately, yeah, like people have to feel like they're witnessing or going on that journey with the artist. It's like some sort of attachment to what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that could be a number of ways. And we've got a list of 10 things coming up. But we have our quick list of what anticipation is not.
And these are just so common still to this day.
This is almost where I'll have to say, before you read it, this is probably where almost, maybe I was gonna say like 90% of music marketing I see, myself included, tends to land in this area.
Yeah, I'm guilty of it too. But yeah, the first example would be like sharing a release date, like putting a post up that's like, my new single's coming out next Friday. I can't wait for you to hear it. It's so great. Okay, that's just information. You've literally said nothing that gets anyone invested or feels any connection. Kind of almost worse than that is like coming soon. Like, yeah. By now, if I say that, my audience is like, yeah, we'll never hear that. That'll be out in 20 years.
Chris, you have like 10 albums coming soon.
Yeah. Anything that has like a real obvious call to action without focusing on that journey. So, new song, pre-save now to hear it. Not that I'm not trying to say those things are never useful, but they don't create anticipation. And then similarly, ad content on its own is not creating anticipation. It can convey anticipation, but just sharing an ad is not doing it.
Yeah, I think it's worth reiterating that these things are not wrong or bad, but they don't ignite a spark in someone to make them care and be curious and want to find out more on their own. We are hit with so much information nowadays that our brains cannot hold it all. And yes, if you hit me with that marketing slogan 100 times, that will push out some other things in my brain and I'll probably remember it. But I still may not care, and I'm still not necessarily actively engaged. And the other thing that's worth noting is that fame can play a factor in here, where when you have a very large audience, and you're always going to have a small percentage that will anticipate anything you do for whatever reason, but that doesn't mean that there isn't more opportunity for them, those famous artists, if they actually crafted a narrative that made people anticipate something. Perfect example, Death Cab for Cutie released a new album in the fall. I'm a big fan. And I remember, I think it was like April or May, they posted something on social media that was literally the coming soon, September something. I'm like, I don't freaking care. That's so far away. I have no emotional investment at something from 6 months from now when there's a million other things going on, So there was no reason for me to take note.
I thought you were going to say that was the one instance of it just creating anticipation simply because you love that band so much. But even that didn't work on you.
No, because it's like we live in a world where it's like stuff is dropping every day, in all aspects of our lives, new things popping up, just, like I said, messaging. It just felt like noise because it didn't intrigue me about the release. It didn't give me any story elements. It just said, hey, at some future date, we're going to release some music, which I would have figured anyway. I didn't know when, but it's like, I can't do anything about it now. There was nothing that I can take part in to go on the journey with them. It was just information that ultimately it's like, tell me like a week out then, because I'm going to forget. So to me, that's one of the big things.
You're a high maintenance fan. You want your favorite band to take you on a journey. Jeez.
That's terrible. It's terrible. I should just listen because it's there and enjoy it and be happy. So another way I kind of framed it is like awareness versus excitement. Are you making me aware of something? Like, hey, this is happening over here. Cool. Or are you driving excitement for that thing? And I sort of was thinking about traditionally how the industry, and not just music industry, but a lot of industries, but this relates specifically to the music industry, how we used to drive awareness about music releases. So I'll say the old school era, and none of these are necessarily irrelevant. It's just things have shifted in how people communicate and what has an impact in a world that is just inundated with messaging and very little attention left. So the old school way was like a radio single, advertising campaign in magazines, and then the band would be touring. That was pretty much the very simplified version of the plan. A song would be out on radio like a month or two before the album was released, hopefully pushing towards the top of the charts right around the release of the music. So people were going out and buying it, and then the tour to support it.
For like the most famous artists out there in any particular genre, you could add to that like maybe a video on MTV or a PR campaign where they were in magazines and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And so that was very much about driving awareness, and it would be exciting at that time. That's how people communicated, and not that those things are irrelevant, like I said, but the way people communicate has changed. Then we really embraced streaming full force, and the focus really became on platforms, playlists, algorithms, and how do we use this platform to get more attention for our music. And that a lot of those things are still at play. But one of the things that's been interesting, and I've experienced, and I heard someone specifically say, I can't remember if it was a conversation you and I were having, Chris, but it was something recently where someone was saying that they've been on some of the big Spotify playlists and they don't seem to have as much impact as they used to, which I think is something that I've experienced as well. And so, yeah, it's kind of like all this thing, we put all our eggs in the basket of like making the platform do the heavy lifting to expose our music. And so if we could just make that happen, then excitement will happen after that as a result. And now I think we're moving into a new era where the things that are important are real-time social, song snippets, participation from your audience, collaboration with other artists and your audience, and the element of surprise and delight. And those things being very important. And those get people excited to pay attention to what you're doing over all the other things that are coming down their feed, that are on their Spotify, Discover Weekly, that, everything that's being thrown at us. Those are the things that seem to be garnering attention, excitement, and investment from fans.
Once again, as someone who writes sad songs, delight sounds like a tall order. I'm supposed to delight my audience?
Delight, that word could go in a different direction. I think
I know what you mean.
Go
the extra mile to entertain them.
Yeah, well, delight could be like, sometimes people want to feel sad. Sometimes I dial up a sad, weepy playlist. And so I think delight could also be translated to meet them where they are, intersect their day in a way that's meaningful for them, that adds something special to what's happening to them in that moment. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean a barrel of laughs, a happy moment. It just means that you intersected my day in a way that made me take notice and I made a connection with you.
I like it.
Yes. All right. So now that we've defined it, and hopefully just that alone will help you understand, look at your marketing efforts through that lens, how you're communicating with your fans through that lens. And that hopefully it helps you make some tweaks that crank up that interaction with your fans and their investment, their excitement, their anticipation for what you're doing. And I should be clear that this is not about clickbait. This is not about the latest dumb trend that is here today, gone tomorrow. Some of those could play into it at times, but it's really about understanding that we are making art and music. And if we want other people to care about it, which may not be your goal, you might just be making it for yourself, for your own personal fulfillment. That's perfectly fine as well. But if you want other people to care about it, you need to make it about them and the experience about them and involve them in some way. And that's so much more powerful. So here we have 10 ways to build anticipation for your release. You want to start us off, Chris?
I'll take the first one. So don't think of your release date as the starting line. Now, this advice has always been true to the extent that you have a bunch of stuff to do before your release comes out. So you've been working hard all along, then the music's out. But what I mean by this is shift your concept of launching anything into the world so that the release date is not the day your music becomes available on Spotify and Apple Music, but rather the first instant that you share anything about any aspect of your new song or new album or whatever. And this is something I kind of crystallized for me in that same panel discussion I was mentioning earlier. A woman named Cassie Petrie, I think, might be Petrie, She's a social music marketing person for a lot of notable artists, and she was basically saying, I coach my artists to think about when they share a clip on TikTok as the release date, and then everything that happens between then and the official, in quotes, release date is building up towards this thing that I want them to think of the official recording as the remix, so that in the audience's mind they have not just a first impression, but like they have something very concrete in their mind. It may only be 15 seconds, it may be the teaser, but that's their idea of the song in an official way up until the point at which the full recording comes out, and now that sounds like a remix. And so it's a new experience that they're anticipating and excited. And then as she was saying that, I had this metaphor in my mind of like, oh yeah, like we think of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin on the moon, like planting their flag, like as if that's the moment. But like people around the world were watching the launch and waiting for whatever days as they coasted towards the moon. Like there was a whole experience that everyone was like hanging on and just like super anticipatory. So it's not all about just planting the flag. It's every step up to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was even before the launch. It was like the president of the United States standing up saying, we're going to the moon many years earlier.
No, yeah, like 7 years earlier or whatever it was.
So yeah, I think that's a good way of looking at it. We were having some meetings here at work recently, and I was saying, you have to understand distribution is not the starting point anymore. That's like a midpoint. People are starting on social as they write a chorus and seeing if people care, getting their fans' feedback, then writing a verse and building that song story in real time. That's why I like when I said the new era, real-time social, and song snippets, meaning that we've sort of decided that a song is only commercially viable is probably the wrong term, but only worthy of putting out into the world once it's been fully commercially packaged.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not how people want to experience it. And I don't think it's necessarily, you may look at, well, there's lots of different ways artists approach the market these days, which is absolutely true. But you also have to pay attention to what's happening in the fan community and what they're enjoying and what they have attention for and desire to experience, because that's a big piece of this equation. And I think that's part of what's driving this shift, as people start to enjoy feeling like they're a part of the process online. The artist on TikTok, we've mentioned him on this podcast, Jake, but it's spelled with a V because the V makes an A sound now, I guess. But if you go watch his TikToks, that's what his whole thing is. And people feel so invested in the process, and some of it is him playing like little snippets for people and them hearing it for the first time. And it feels like you're like a fly on the wall for how a song is created. And it just feels raw and real at times, which isn't the experience when you have this, hey, today's release day on Spotify. It's just a different experience.
I'm glad you mentioned that example, because I was worrying that the sticklers in the audience listening would be like, you guys are talking about a concept. That's not a tactic. This is supposed to be 10 ways to build anticipation. But for one, I think adjusting your mindset so you think of the official release as not the official release. The official release now is whenever you share anything about the song. I do feel like your own kind of creative process will lead you to find some specific ways to do this. But that Jake one is a great example of just share the making of the music and get people in on it. So
yeah. And you should check out what he does. There's some things that, he does that are very cool. There's some things that I would be like, I don't know if I could do that. Like when he airdrops random people tracks in the mall food court, like that. I don't know.
By the way, to go back to Folk Alliance, did you notice that happening in your phone at all in the lobby?
It did not.
People kept trying to send me pictures. I'm like, nope. Deny.
I've heard of people doing that on airplanes, like pulling up when they're sitting on the tarmac, pulling up their phone and like seeing that, like starting a
folk spam.
Yeah.
Folk photo spam. That's what was happening.
Number 2, we have a case study. And I guess like the 10 ways, this would be about building anticipation through the use of multiple videos of the song. But I'm going to use a case study of Walk Off the Earth. They just released a song called My Stupid Heart. And what I thought they did was just absolutely brilliant. Over the course of like maybe 3 weeks or so, might have been longer, they started making videos, and they're all different. But the one thing that they did just right from the get-go that was genius is not once did they play anything other than the chorus. And it was funny because when it got to one of the videos, which I'll mention in a second, I realized I haven't heard anything on this song except the chorus.
Which by that point you knew by heart.
Yes, absolutely. So they had a string of 9 videos, and they have a huge audience online. So that's something to keep in mind. But I thought just running down this list of what the videos were real quick might help trigger some ideas for you about like, oh yeah, I can keep redoing this in different ways and interesting ways that people want to pay attention to, that sort of plays like radio for my fans. Because that's one thing I feel like if you do TikTok right, it sort of becomes how radio used to be back in the day, where there's just this repetition and reinforcing a hooky song that you know you're going to like, but nobody typically likes something the very first second they hear it. Their brain has to figure out what it is. Do I like it? And then a couple times like, yeah, I love this. So first off, they had this giant guitar with the full band playing on that one guitar. And they did the call out like we talked about with Brittany Kellogg, like, are you this type of person? We wrote a song for you. And that video got 6.6 million views. Then they had an up close, like just their faces, and you can barely see the ukulele and an acoustic guitar. No call out, just the chorus, 3 people singing. One thing that's important to note with like Walk Off the Earth that I think is great is they don't feel like everybody has to be in every video. So it changes it up visually. That's something that they're doing a lot as well. Every video looks different. I should also say what I thought was cool that they did to build anticipation for the release is they made a logo for the song. It said My Stupid Heart, and it had like a heart with, I don't know, was it barbed wire around it or something? I don't know.
Something like that. And they have a consistent text font too. That's unique.
Yeah. And they had the lyrics going over top on all the videos, but yeah, they had that logo. So it's kind of like reinforcing that this is a particular release for a song. Then they made this fruit drum machine, like this literal fruit with the wires plugged into it. So when you touch the fruit, it basically becomes an electronic switch and triggers a sound. And so you're kind of like, what the heck is this? And they played all the sounds using this electronic
It was like a
thing.
little weird synth pop version of the song.
Yeah.
When you'd already heard an acoustic version and whatever else they'd done.
And I loved the call out on that because Sarah, the lead singer, says, we wrote a new song and we're going to play it on this table of fruit. And you're just like, what? That one had 10.4 million views. The acoustic one, I don't think mentioned, had 6.3. And I mentioned this because you'll see a trend, and there's a funny one coming up that performed poorly. Then they had their boys playing the song, and there was just cuteness overload. You got to go watch this. The performance by their son, who I would guess is probably, 2nd or 3rd grade. I don't know. I'm terrible with ages with kids, and his performance was amazing, complete with a massive drool at the end. And it went crazy viral, 57 million. Then the mom and son, the official sound, kind of as a response to a comment from that video, they're just dancing around while the video is playing in the corner. That one got 13.4. Then there was a very different one, the lead singer and their friend playing just a harp and acoustic guitar, more mellow version. But the hook was there was this unexpected punch at the end, and that got 4.8 million. And then the mom and son open verse call out. Again, at this point, that's when I realized I still haven't heard any verses of this. So they still didn't play a verse, but they called out for people to contribute a verse. That got 13.4 million. Then the downturn. They did a slap bass version of the chorus,
which I loved.
There was 2 guys playing the bass, no singing, 500,000 views. Which would be a lot. That would have been amazing for my band,
for
for that trajectory they were on, that was clearly less interesting to people. And then the last one leading up to release was the boys that were in that video excitedly announcing the song is out now with the song playing. And that got 11.7 million. And interspersed between all this, they had other cover songs they were dropping and some other random videos. But I just thought that was a really good case study in repetition, building excitement for a song, keeping it interesting. So on release day, when I saw that video, I went and listened to it on Spotify.
Can I add 3 to the list?
Yes.
Okay, so these all in some way relate to the song as well. In response to the nice acoustic, slow, intimate performance that randomly ends with someone getting punched, a woman, I think it was a woman, commented like, "This was a beautiful song and then you ruined it. I can tell you're only doing that to get the likes." So the singer, she shot a video in her car commenting on that comment, being like, to all the people who say things like, "You're only doing that for the likes, I just want to let you know."
Or for the views.
For the views. That's kind of the fucking point. And like, she like does this quick zoom in on her face, and it's totally like, I don't know. You kind of don't know where she's going with it. And then it's totally unapologetic. Yes, we're doing this for the views. Absolutely. Which I thought was hilarious. Which also plays into this other thing of like trying to stir up controversy in the comments to get, you know, the algorithm to see it's got a lot of engagement, share it to more people. One other thing they did was their drummer did that drum competition. I forget what it's called, but you've probably seen it on TikTok where there's a 1, 2, 3, 4 and a 1, 2, 3, 4 written in 2 rows. And the idea is the drummer has to play all various polyphonic sort of rhythms in each combination of those numbers against a metronome, basically. So he sets a metronome and he says it's at 230 beats per minute. And then the comment or the caption says like, "This is the fastest any drummer has ever done this." And then you start noticing the drummers piling into the comments being like, "That's horse shit. This isn't 230 beats per minute." So then one of the members of the band was like, "Yeah, it's 115. We're doing like a cut time thing." And basically, yeah, we're just trolling you. So you'll get all irritated and comment. And then the last one was funny. I think they're in the studio and what's his name? Gianni, the male lead singer. He keeps moving this bathroom door back and forth and it's squeaking. Did you see that one?
I think so.
It's squeaking almost like the melody of their song, My Stupid Heart. So it's like he's getting the door to sing the song, which I thought was funny too.
Yeah. Yeah. We're going to have them on the podcast hopefully soon. I've reached out. They do so many amazing things that I think really tap into the essence of social video. And they were one of the pioneers way back in the day with their Gautier cover. Somebody I used to, what's the name of the song? Somebody I used to know.
That I used to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that went crazy viral for them on YouTube. So anyway,
every time that song comes up, I have to be the one to say the official title, and I do it slowly. My brain is like, "What is it again?" Yeah.
I know. I was like, what was it, Chris? I know we spent a good section talking about them. I think it's worth going and checking out their profile because I felt like I was taken on a journey, and I actually started looking forward to their videos. And I've followed them for quite a while just because they've been through the CD Baby universe multiple times over their career. We were here when they were with CD Baby when that original video went crazy viral, and I felt like I was taken on a journey, and I was anticipating this release, and I just thought they expertly grabbed my attention in a busy world and made it interesting and fun. And I was looking forward to more. There was another artist that was just a indie, much younger indie artist that was starting out in her career. I think it had a couple releases that was doing a different type of thing to build anticipation. I don't know why it was in my feed, if I followed her at some point or what, but I didn't know what her name was. And I was trying to find her as an example for this podcast, and I could not. She was doing a very different approach, but also had a new single coming out. I thought she had some interesting tactics. If I find it, I will mention it in a future episode of the podcast. But I don't think there's some things, because you might be thinking, well, Walk Off the Earth has a huge audience, so there's things that work for them that won't for everybody. That is true. But I think there's a lot to learn from what they're doing. And there's other independent artists who are starting out that are trying these things and seeing some success as well.
Yeah, and just to kind of summarize all that, I think the lesson is there's many angles into your song. So make a long list and get exhaustive. Like, think about the deep stuff about the song. Think of silly stuff that, think of things that are completely unrelated, but just are visually entertaining that you can, like the squeaking door. There's lots of ways to cover this stuff. Make a list and then set aside the time to actually execute on it.
Yeah, alternate versions that might be completely different than what you have on the official recording. It doesn't matter. If it's a good song, it'll stick. And that's, I think, the other key takeaway. They just played the chorus. Not once did they play a verse. Just the chorus. That's all they needed. It was such a good chorus. It reinforced that hook. And so when the song came out, you got to hear the whole thing. I checked. They have, that song has been out, I think, a week and a half, and it has 2 million streams on Spotify. So,
and how are the verses?
They're good.
So they weren't hiding the blemishes of their song.
Or maybe that would be funny if there were no verses. They were just open. So. All right, moving on. We won't bog down on the other ones as much, but we had a case study there that you could go and look up, and so we wanted to spend some time there. The third thing is participation. In shaping the music or artwork, driving community so your fans are invested in the outcome. Like, we're doing this together. This isn't just us over here being the artist and you over here being just the fan riffraff. We're all in this together. We're doing this together. So what are some of those?
Well, you mentioned one with Walk Off the Earth, which is a sort of open verse, hey, duet this kind of thing. And when you quoted how much that had been shared, what went unaddressed is that plenty of people were creating their own videos using this stuff that, obviously got views of their
enormous
own
amount.
So the more people you can get to collaborate in that way, even if what they make doesn't end up on the official recording, like, they've got a level investment where they're going to want to hear the real song and then be like, what I did was better. Why didn't they use my verse? So that's one thing. You can poll your fans, get their opinions, sort of workshop your stuff kind of in real time. Not that you want to like let your fans dictate your art, but like there's probably a middle ground there for getting them bought in. And then one thing that Emma McGann did that I asked her about a few episodes ago about her Discord game that she designed around her EP. She had her fans help her design the monsters that ended up in her role-playing game and videos that were all related to that EP. So doesn't necessarily have to be musical collaboration. It could be art, design, in her case, sort of video, 3D imaging. So yeah, just any way to get them involved.
Yeah, I think that's one of those things that there's lots of things you can try. I know for us, we did a coloring contest, and we have a thing about contests later on, so I'll save that detail. But just thinking about getting people to participate and feel like they influence the outcome or they're a part of the story in some way. All right. Number 4, we have Tease, like a film trailer, how you can like create an open loop. I think that's something that we're very used to with streaming services and movies and TV shows, really sort of creating this, I have to see what happens. I have to understand how this ends or the culmination of this story. Just thinking about how you can craft a story. And it doesn't mean that the release is necessarily the culmination of that, but just it's much more interesting and fun to follow along with a story that keeps you curious, to pay attention to, the journey of the music release than it is to just be getting information about it.
And I'm trying to think of how, like, an example of that. Nothing's really coming to me, so I'm just inventing one of my own. But like, it doesn't have to be full of trickery and TikTokery. Like, it could be something as like almost like a film trailer. Like, I was so tired of this kind of hip hop, so I decided to try something totally new and infuse this influence, and it's like nothing you've heard before. Like, if you kind of play to someone's sense of disappointment about what's out there and they're looking for the same thing that you're promising, that's almost like a film trailer version of a music thing.
Yeah.
And then the next thing on our list is to explore unfinished things. So this would be like the equivalent of a TV cliffhanger. And again, this is it's tough to know how to do this in music content, but like there is that thing of like TikTok cutting where you make a video and then you cut off the last word. Like you could probably do something like, I don't know, some sort of content and be like, my new song's coming out, and then like fall and like the information never arrives. So someone's like, what? Like any way to shock people into feeling like something's unfinished, then they want to know when previously they didn't care.
Yeah. Yeah. And some of these things we have like strong examples around. Others are just things that we know are triggers for people to like have that feeling of, I have to know what happens. I mean, we obviously have seen clickbait over the years. That's what it totally plays on, is like the unfinished thing, or the I must know the answer, that, you know, the tease. So those are just things that get people to invest a little bit more emotionally, a little bit more mentally in things. And we just want you to be aware of like, hey, think about how that might play out in your story and what you're trying, and get creative.
Yeah, what's next? Oh, we've been sort of talking about this throughout, but just in making the audience feel invested in your story, and anything where they can see their own identity in what you as the artist are experiencing. And I mentioned earlier, like it could be you've gone through some difficulties or had, you know, some rejection, and now you're going to go through a transformation, and they can root for you through your struggle. And then, you know, the triumph is the release or something, or the reveal. It could be a change of genre. It could be anything about your life, you know, just saying like, this will be the new me. Don't you want to see it, sort of thing. Not in those words, please.
No, I think this plays into, I've used this in several keynotes that I've given, where I talk about the Olympics and how the Olympics, if you know, I think most people are familiar with the Olympics, but their coverage, depending on where you're listening in the world, your coverage may vary as far as how it's presented to you. I can tell you in the United States, most of the sports that are in the Olympics aren't anything people think about on a mainstream level any time of the year other than when the Olympics are happening. Yes, there are very big pockets and subcultures of all these events, but I'm talking about mainstream wide, that it gets national coverage on, you know, as big as the Olympics. But they tell these stories about these athletes that make you feel for their investment of time and effort, the trials and all the things that they've gone through to get to the Olympics. So when I see that person stepping up on the ski slope, I'm like, it feels like so much is hanging in the balance. Where I love winter sports, I love snowboarding, but if I just saw randomly slalom skiing on the TV somewhere, I would not care one bit. But you just feel that weight of it. Everything's on the line with this artist. And I think as artists, there's a lot of similarities for us.
Mm-hmm.
It is not an easy life, even when things are going well, because it's so different from what most people, how they live their life of a 9-to-5 job, and being in one place all the time. And so it's just a very different type of lifestyle that has a lot of adversity built into it. And telling that story and understanding, and your journey as a musician, being able to convey that, makes people want to be there. And also being okay to not have it tied up with a bow every time. I think that's part of it also, that we want so badly just to portray ourselves as everything's okay, that we just gloss over these really emotional story points and hooks and elements because we're afraid to reveal about what the reality of our lives are at times. But to me, that makes people want to invest in the story and root for you and be there when the release comes out, because it feels like a victory for them as well.
Yeah. Well, I think that leans into the big arc of your life sort of storytelling, but I almost think you could probably find ways in which it's about the small aspects of music life too. Like, hey, I'm a touring musician and I'm spending most of my day driving, finding a restaurant, getting to the venue. And so I missed an email from my cousin that he was getting married or whatever. Like I missed a booking email, or people started getting really pissed at me that I wasn't replying in the comments, and because I'm just like, this is my life. I'm like literally driving all the time.
Just broken down beside the road with no cell coverage for 4 hours.
Yeah. So if it takes me like literally, whatever, 10 weeks to get back to you, this is why, just those little aspects of your life that you take for granted, but that are interesting, I think, to your average viewer.
Yeah.
Our next thing on the list, we kind of covered already, but I just said hook them with the hook. So this gets back to, Kevin, what you were saying about Walk Off There. They only shared the chorus, and by the time you'd see 9 of their videos, like, the chorus, my stupid heart. It's like, there it is. And then if you want to hear the rest, you got to hear the final song. And then number 8 on our list is, sometimes rarity and difficulty can give a sense of adventure, and sort of like the adventure of hunting for something. And this sort of flies in the face of a lot of stuff we say about just making sure your music is available everywhere. But like, that hobby people do, geocaching. Have you ever heard of that? It's kind of like Pokemon Go.
Oh yeah.
But
yeah.
It's like there's just some random object that's buried in the woods somewhere. It means nothing, but the fact that you have to go find it, suddenly it means everything, and it's hard to find, and whatever.
I'm burying all my music in the forest from now on.
Yeah, well, it reminded me of what
Actually, that may not be a bad idea.
That would be a brilliant idea. You should geocache your next album.
That would be good.
Because it's like what Christina was saying in our last episode. I was talking about NFTs, and she said, yeah, my ambient label did cassette releases. That's like an analog NFT. It's hard to find. No one knows how to play them. No one has the cassette players anymore. And so all that difficulty and rarity that's baked in makes it feel more like, ooh, that's really cool and special. I'm going to look forward to that and try to get into the game. And so Emma McGann, to talk about games, did this. She made a whole, multiplayer game out of Discord bot game out of her release. And now it's like, to get the full experience, you've got to dive into this thing that is not easy. So yeah, I like that as an angle too, for people who want to make their fans work.
Yeah. Yeah. People don't want things that are just handed to them, as much as that's the storyline we see in politics and all sorts of. People like to feel like when they got to the end of something, it was earned.
Mm-hmm.
It feels special. And it feels like something, an experience maybe you got that was unique to you yourself, because no one else is going to have the same journey for that thing as you are.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
The next one.
Yeah, the next one, I said, don't make it all about one thing, by which I mean just don't put all your eggs in the basket of one video or one just any one thing. And to go back to the sort of marketing funnel that I've talked about building for Alice Howe, it was that there was a whole path of content pieces that built on the next. There was a video of her performing with a tuba in the background. Suddenly she decides to record the song. She asks her fans if she should. They say yes. Then she has to go rent studio space. What the hell's that like when you're on tour? Here's the adventure. Oh crap, we need a tuba. Now there's an adventure piece of content about hunting down a tuba, on and on and on, so that by the time the actual song is out, there's this whole structured pathway. And I don't think most fans or viewers or whatever really even consciously knew they were on a journey. They're just following along with anticipation, which is, hopefully the effect. You don't want them to feel like they're being manipulated towards some objective.
Yeah. And I think what's important for people to understand is that this doesn't have to be completely impromptu or off the cuff. It could be, you could be like going, oh, this is funny, we should turn on a camera. Or you can also, and this is typically what I will do when I'm with my band. It's like, what are the things that we're going to do and experience today that might be interesting? Oh, it'd be funny. We have to go get this tuba. That'd be hilarious if we videoed the process, because I don't know where you get a tuba from. So it can start like that, and just like kind of thinking about what story elements you might be experiencing that day.
Mhm.
Years ago, when we were recording back at Ardent Studios, I made a little video thing of us pulling out this
Oh, the
Mellotron.
Mellotron? I remember
Yeah,
that.
yeah. And it was like, oh, the Mellotron's sitting in the corner, and all these famous albums had used it. And we're like, let's see if it even works. And you see us putting it down the hallway, plugging it in, trying to get sound. And then it sounding like a dying cat by the time we actually got it working. It was not in good shape, which they told us would be the case before we started it. But I'm like, I don't care. I want this video.
The challenge was worth it.
Yeah. And I don't even think it made it on the record. I think, or we might have cut one little piece. And at the end of the day, there's far better samples that exist now. It could have solved us a lot of
your keyboard
headache.
player has a Nord, right? That
Yeah,
Mellotron
yeah.
sounds way better, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so, but the idea was I knew it'd make for a good story element. And so some of those things can be planned in advance. And knowing that, you know, that'll be funny, or knowing when to turn on the camera and go, you know, we should record this because this is kind of funny. Or this, it doesn't always have to be funny. It could be interesting. It can be informative, and just feel like I'm there through some sort of interesting story point as a fan.
Yeah, our last thing on the list is contests. You can run a contest, and this I think we should have a word of warning. Like, don't do it if it's not integral or related to the music in some really cool way. Like, you know, there's probably a lot of ways to phone in a contest that just lands with a thud, but people do love to win things. And if you're building into the story in an interesting way and it's a great prize, I think it can be a really cool way to build anticipation. And to talk about Emma again, she had a leaderboard as part of her whole Discord game where fans were incentivized to compete with each other. And then we just got an email today from an artist named Ellie Dixon, who has built a video game related to her new release with a leaderboard. And I think with her, it's with the top three people with the top three scores on that get some special bonus merch or something. So that's a really cool way to do a contest because it came with a lot of effort of literally building a video game related to her music.
Yeah, I had that up. I think I accidentally closed the window. The video game. Well, the funny thing was, at first, I didn't know if I should click on the email. Trying to find where here it is. The subject line was Big Lizard Energy. But the song, here it is. The song, what is about dinosaurs. And so the little video game, it's like her dressed up as a dinosaur, and it looks like, you know, like Super Mario Brothers kind of vibe on the video game. And yeah, you get to play, and you get the songs playing while you play, and there'll be prizes for people with the highest score. So I think it becomes this thing where you kind of tap into people's competitive spirit, and they're hearing the song over and over again while they keep playing, like, oh no, I want to be number one. You know, it's like you give them a goal and objective, and they just want to go for it, and they want to win. And they're being reinforced with the song and having fun with your artist brand as well. And I thought that was really cool. I've got an email out trying to figure out how much it cost and how they made it happen, because you know, if it's something that's affordable for artists, like if there's a company that kind of just prefabs these and drops in some elements, it'd be a fun thing that lots of artists could try. If they paid 10 grand or 20 grand for it, it'd be like, oh, that's cool. I'm not going to try that though.
Yeah. Cool, but no thanks.
I'm assuming they didn't, but who knows? Who knows?
Chat GPT, build me a video game.
That's true.
For
that's
my new song.
There we go. See, it'll be done before I even finish this next sentence. That I did mention that coloring contest we did. That was one thing that we did that was fun and participatory, and it was related to our live album to build anticipation around that and just have people have fun and feel like they were a part of the process. And, you know, while they were doing their coloring, they're thinking about the band. They've got our music on. It's, you know, then they're kind of interested in what other people are doing and all that. So that's an idea as well, that it's like how do you get a contest is something that hopefully drives people's excitement to follow along with the story in a way of like, what's the outcome going to be? Who's going to win?
That's why we keep putting the quarters in those old video games.
The kind of contests that I think don't lean into that are the ones where it's like, hey, drop your email here, and in 6 months we'll send everybody an email to let you know who won. It's like that. I don't care. I might even put my name in there. I've long forgotten about it. I'm not invested emotionally in any way in the outcome because my assumption is I will not win. So that's why, like some of these other things where it feels experiential have a benefit.
Yeah, and just personal gripe. I hate contests where it's that thing where you're like, you get 2 points if you follow us on Twitter. You get 3 points if you share our Instagram post. You get 20 points if you give us it's like you get more and more and more points. Like, I'm exhausted.
That's work. You're
know.
asking me to do work for you. I don't work for you.
And I'm probably not going to win the thing after all that work.
Yeah. After all that work, I know I'm going to lose. So never mind. Okay. Never mind. Yeah. Well, that was our list of 10 ways to build anticipation for your music. If you've got some ideas that you think we missed, or you've tried some stuff where you really noticed your fans getting on board and feeling invested and along for the ride, we want to hear about it. You can call our listener line at 360-524-2209, or you can email us at podcast@cdbabypodcast.com. We'd love to share your experience on the show. So send them in. Give us a call.
Heck yeah.
All right. Any final thoughts on that, Chris, or are we ready to move on to our call?
I think we can move on.
All right. Excellent. All right. We just have one call this week from Dale, and here it goes.
Hey guys, this is my name's Dale Benedict. You might remember me. I was the only person at the conference who was wearing a monk robe. That's right, Gregorian rock. Your question on your last podcast was about how are we using AI in our music-related activities, and I've been using the DALL-E site to generate some imagery that I'm using in music video production. It's never exactly what I need, so I'm always manipulating them in some way. But it's very helpful, speeds up the process, and gives me some resources I wouldn't have otherwise. Keep up the good work. You guys are awesome. Bye.
Hello, Gregorian rock.
Thanks for the call, Dale. Yeah, it can be a very useful tool and can do a lot of heavy lifting for you on a lot of the really administrative type work we find ourselves doing as artists, whether writing bios, creating descriptions. I feel like there's a lot of usefulness around that in, the things that we struggle with as artists because we're having to describe ourselves, talk about ourselves. And so you can enter in some things, have it craft a bio, create some imagery, and do that gets you out of your own head in a way where you probably wouldn't have that problem talking about somebody else or writing about somebody else. Mm-hmm. But Chris, we've received one negative comment on Twitter about that episode.
Yeah. I can't remember the exact quote, but it was like, you guys are basically describing my worst nightmare, and it's all the more heartbreaking that this content is coming from my music distributor. As you know, and if you're listening, I suppose I'm objecting to the idea that we shouldn't be covering super important topics that literally everyone in the music industry needs to think about, because how things work and get monetized and claimed is on the line, and not in the future, but like right now. So yes. And I don't know, maybe that person listened and thought we put an overly positive spin on it. I tried to make a lot of Matrix and HAL 9000 Skynet jokes just to give a nod to the fact that it could be a catastrophe, but There's also some cool things we can do with it right now.
My theory, or it might have been your theory, but I think this is the reality. I don't think that person listened to the episode or read anything. I think they saw that we were talking about AI in music and jumped to an enormous amount of conclusions, which seems to be how the world works today. See half a sentence, lose your mind over what you just read, don't read the context, go start a war, be mad at everybody, then go back and read the article and go, oh, that's not really what they were saying.
You know who wouldn't have jumped to a conclusion without fully digesting the information?
Who?
Chat GPT.
That's true. That's true. It keeps its emotions in check.
Yeah.
But I reviewed our notes. I thought we were very even-handed. We said these are the things that it can be useful for. These are the concerns. And yeah, like you said, it is definitely something that if you are in music right now, you should be paying attention, because it's not only for those various reasons we just mentioned. Are there things that are useful? Yes. Are there things that are going to be that are very concerning right now that are going to be already hot topics, but you're going to be hearing about them all year long, especially as it pertains to rights and flooding social or streaming markets and social platforms with AI generated music, and all that. So,
yeah. This was a short listener calls and comments segment.
Yeah. We go through like sometimes it's feast or famine. So feel free to call or email. Also, there was a few emails where it was like a book, and it's like I can't really, try to keep your questions and comments. If the reading time is 20 minutes to read we're not going to get it on the podcast. But if you keep it short and brief, we will love to get on the podcast as many as possible, and we would, I don't know what I'm saying. We love
keep
having
it short.
fun.
That's
Keep
what
it
you're
short.
saying.
We did have some that were very specific to very individual users without understanding the context. It was hard, like with claims, videos being blocked and claimed and stuff like that. And without doing like a real deep dive in those, it's hard to understand what the situation is and be able to comment on it in a way that makes sense for everyone who's listening.
We're asking them to keep it short while we're like, what were we talking about? Huh? Past the 1 hour mark. We get to ramble, but hey, it's our show.
That's right. We don't force anybody to listen.
You're free to go.
You're free to go at any time. But we're happy you're still here. Please stay. All right. Well, it continues to be an interesting year. We're halfway through February as of recording this, and it's an interesting year already. Lots to look forward to as far as the music we're working on, the music space, and how it's evolving. And yeah, it's going to be a good one.
Heck yeah. And soon enough, we'll have some news about some interesting CD Baby events.
Yes. Hopefully by next episode.
Cool.
All right.
See you next week then.
All right. Take it easy. Bye.